quickly in a low voice. "Look, over there. Isn't that President Herbert?" An old man with a worn and kindly face, full of dignity and reserve, was approaching them. As he passed, he glanced with friendly curiosity at them both, at which Mr. Freundlich raised his hat in a respectful salute. "Yes," he said a moment later, in surprise. "You are right, it is the ex-president. He, too, has had to leave the country." "How could that be?" cried Mrs. Freundlich, in astonishment. But a moment later, she added more reasonably, "Why not?" "Exactly," said Gottfried. "Why not? Sooner or later." And he shrugged his shoulders as though to say, there's no use even discussing it. But he had to admit to himself that it gave him a warm feeling of comfort and even security to realize that such a great man was traveling on the same journey as himself. "In that case," he said, "we will surely go through all right." At the same time, it was obvious from a slight hesitation in his voice that he was not so sure as he would like to be. "Oh," cried his wife, "of course we will get through. They couldn't hold us up now." But in her voice, also, there was a note of appeal, as though she wished to be reassured. "Where else would we go, since we cannot go back?" "We will have to see," he said. "We will have to wait and see." But he made up his mind to speak to Mr. Herbert at the first opportunity and to ask him what he thought of the chances. It was true, they couldn't very well go back because there was no place for them in the old country anymore. Now everything depended upon what lay ahead in the future. Though, for that matter, even if he had been invited to return, it is doubtful if Gottfried Freundlich would have gone back, because the truth was, he no longer understood what was going on there. He was a literary man, an art critic, and in particular a music critic. He had written for the newspapers and the periodicals, and for a long while he had enjoyed a certain amount of fame, and of course deference and respect. But in the end, and just recently, people's tastes had changed, and before Gottfried knew what was happening, he found himself old-fashioned. Well, there was no help for it. He liked the old forms better than the new. "You are making the same mistake," he was told, "that they made about all the great composers, to say nothing of Rembrandt and Van Gogh." "I still do not like Picasso," said Mr. Freundlich. And he wrote an article in which he expressed the opinion that art should appeal to man's soul, and that through art he should be made aware of his heritage of earth, his kinship to other men, his debt to the past, and his bond to the future. To this his enemies replied, and even his friends had to agree, "Freundlich is losing his mind." He often discussed the future with his wife Ketty, who had a kind nature and was optimistic about everything. "The question is," he would say, "is there anything to look forward to? Is it possible to lose touch with the past and still have a future? Or is the so-called future to be simply a moving outward in all directions, of forms which no one recognizes and which have never been seen before on earth?" He continued, "It is only through men like me that people in the future will know what the past looked like. Otherwise, people living today would be made to appear to their grandchildren with 3 eyes and stomachs made out of triangles." To this, Mrs. Freundlich always made the same consoling reply, "Don't worry." But in the end, they had to leave everything behind them, all Gottfried's collections of books and music and pictures, and Mrs. Freundlich's embroidery. There was no way of taking anything along. And they were not at all sure what they would find in the way of art or appreciation where they were going. Although there were many reports from across the border, most of them were conflicting. The general opinion was not encouraging, although no one had actually returned with conclusive evidence one way or the other. There was, in fact, something like a curtain of silence between the two countries, the old and the new, and very little was known of what lay at the other side of those mysterious mountains, which could now be seen low as a cloud on the horizon. "I am only sorry," said Mrs. Freundlich, "for my 6 Dresden teacups. It would have seemed so much like home to have had them with me. They are not valuable, though I had them for a long time, but of course it was quite impossible."